Okay, here you see the 38th Congress. Now, what I'm really going to talk about here is how the statutory definition of a state, it is not the constitutional definition of a state. They are totally different. And here you see in June 30th, 1864, that they defined a state to include the territories and the District of Columbia where such construction is necessary to carry out the provision of this act. And what is this act? This act is the act to provide the internal revenue to support the government to pay interest on the public debt, which you remember that is in the 14th Amendment, the public debt. We are not to question it, okay? They can just pour on the debt. We're not to question it, and those are only in a state, which includes the territories and the District of Columbia. Now, let me just go on further down, and keep in mind the uh, the Civil War started April 12th of 1861 and it ended April 9th of 1865. So this was approved 1 year prior to the end of the Civil War. Now, the District of Columbia is not a state. Let me get rid of that one. Is not a state. And in 1819, prior to the Civil War, the Supreme Court ruled that no political dreamer was ever wild enough to think of breaking down the lines which separate the states and of compounding the American people into one common mass. But that's what they're trying to do today, and they're trying to do it in so many ways. In uh, in 1922, it said the word state was the meaning generally given to the Constitution, and it does not include the territories. The District of Columbia is not a state within the clause of the federal Constitution. The District of Columbia is not a state within the meaning of the Constitution. And uh, and the District of Columbia is not a state again, and this is all after the Civil War. So it's important to understand the word include and including. It only means what is said thereafter, and in its own code, it says, and you can read this here. The term includes, including, when used in a definition contained in this title, shall not be deemed to exclude other things otherwise within the meaning of the term defined. Now that's a little confusing, and I'll go on to explain here. In 7701, the definition includes is a hybrid composite of two of the principal rules of statutory construction interpretation. And here is Latin. I'm not good at speaking Latin. I'm not going to even begin to try. But the Latin terms define respectively as follows. This Latin term here is of the same kind. When you're talking territories in the District of Columbia, well, you could talk before 1959, you could talk about Alaska and Hawaii, and I bring those up specifically for the reasons which will follow. But here it says, when a list of specific items belonging to the same class as followed by general words, as in cats, dogs, and other animals. And, so it'd be an example to the domestic animals. And then this Latin term here, inclusion of one, is the exclusion of another. So the list of specific items is not followed by general words to be taken as exhaustive. For example, weekends and public holidays exclude ordinary weekdays. So when they say includes the District of Columbia, it's not, and they're saying that a state includes the District of Columbia. Well, the 50 Union States is not like the District of Columbia. We are a nation of nations. Okay, we are a union of nations. Each and every of the 50 states in itself is a nation, and we have a compact with the federal government. Which came first, the federal government or the Union States? The Union States, as defined in the Declaration of Independence. So here you go on to read, and now what I wanted to bring up here is the meaning of the IRS terms United States and state. Americans who are not citizens of the United States are not liable to income to wit. And here's a court decision. Unless the defendant can establish that he is not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. So, if you want to argue jurisdiction and you want to really put up a good fight, ask the IRS right here and now, when you get a bill, how do you deem that I'm a citizen of the United States? And you can go ahead and do this exercise in writing them and ask them to rebut or refute the court's definition, just like we do with Section 83 or any other. You got to first provide the evidence that you're relying on. You're building your record, okay? And so you're relying on what the courts have said, what the code has said, and what the English language defines what words mean. So here you got Title 26 CFR 1.1-1A provides in pertinent part. The section of the Internal Revenue Code imposes an income tax on every income of every individual who is a citizen or resident of the United States. Who is a citizen? This is under parent C. Every person born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction, District of Columbia, jurisdiction is a citizen. Now, its jurisdiction, it doesn't say their jurisdiction, meaning plural. It's singular, the District of Columbia. And in Title 552A, Parent 2 provides in pertinent part the term individual means a citizen of the United States. So the controlling definition of the IRC, the terms United States and state, is found in 7701. United States, the term United States when used in a geographical sense includes only the states and the District of Columbia. And then number 10, in parent 10 of 7701A, parent 10, the term state shall construe to include the District of Columbia. The term includes used in the definition is as follows. Now I'm going to be repeating myself what I just said previously, but I have this here to really get it through some people's understanding. Now, what I want to do is go on to the definitions, okay? Now, the term state includes the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, and American Samoas. What are they? They're all territories, okay? They're not individual states. Using the IRC, the term includes the IRC 3121E, the definition of state, requires that we identify other members of the associated groups that are of the same general kind as those enumerated in 3121E1, but not named. Whereas the District of Columbia is a state only because the controlling definition 7701(10) construes to be such, but identifies no other state. The District of Columbia is excluded, number two, as a member of the same associated group or same general kind as the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, Guam, and American Samoa. The Secretary tells us that in the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Guam, and American Samoa, there are insular U.S. possession territories that have their own governments and their own tax systems, to wit, in pertinent part. The U.S. possession can be divided into two groups. Those who have their own governments and their own tax systems, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. And those who do not have their own government's system. The government's first group of territories impose their own income tax and withhold the taxes on their own residents. Emphasis added. Okay. So I'm going to just shoot on down here to a more pertinent part here. One of the most fruitful conclusive methods of establishing the meaning of the term state in the IRC is to trace a history of changes to the United States Code. Such occurred when Alaska and Hawaii were admitted into the Union. It is instructive to illustrate these changes as they occur in the IRC definition of state, found in the first Code Amendment effective January of 1959 when Alaska was admitted into the Union. The Second Amendment became effective August 21st in 1959 when Hawaii was admitted into the Union. So here, let's look at it. When 1954 and prior, Alaska is a U.S. territory and Hawaii is a U.S. territory. The term state shall construe to include the territories and the District of Columbia where such construction is necessary to carry out the provisions of this title. Now let's scoot back here for a minute. And let's rehearse here let's review here what it said, that whenever the word state is used in this act, it shall construe to include the territories and the District of Columbia. Such construction is necessary to carry out the provision of this act. And what is the act? It is the Internal Revenue to collect money to pay the debt. All right, so with that being said, let's get back to here. So now revision one, Alaska is a state, becomes a state of the Union. Hawaii remains as a territory. So what do? The term state shall be construed to include the territory of Hawaii and the District of Columbia where such construction is necessary to carry out the provision of this title. See, because what happened, Alaska joined the Union, they striked out territories and substitute territory of Hawaii. So now Hawaii joins the Union and they strike out the territory of Hawaii, and immediately after the word include, Alaska is a state of the union. Hawaii is now a state of the union. The term state shall be construed to include the District of Columbia, whereas construction is necessary to carry out the provision of this title. Notice how Alaska and Hawaii only fit the definition of state, and that's the statutory definition, before they were declared to be state of the United States of America and now hereby admitted into the Union on equal footing with the original states in all respects whatsoever. The emphasis is mine on that one. So and it goes on that the Congress shall have power to exercise exclusive legislation over the district as it may become the seat of the government of the United States. The district is created a government by the name the District of Columbia, and that's in the revised statutes here. And in a political sense means the District of Columbia, to wit, the United States means a District of Columbia municipal corporation. And in every state, if you look up in the Uniform Code, you will look up, as is found here in the Florida Code in Statute 679.3071, parent 8. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. So with that being said, that's what I have to say about the definition of state. To your success.